All right, everyone. It is such a pleasure to have you here with us, albeit virtually, for the third and final for this season webinar and the Latin America and Ruta regions in dialogue series. In this three-part series, we sought to bring scholars, activists, and artists from Latin American countries and from what we call the Ruta region, which is our term for naming countries and regions that fall within the Baltics, Central Europe, the Balkans, the Caucasus, North Asia, um, uh, into a shared conversation about solidarities, about the things that we hold in common, and about ways to be in dialogue with each other. The key question for us has been how can we find uh, ways to connect? How can we understand each other better? And how can we foster these global dialogues together? This series of webinars is also a part of our larger attempt to hold multiple regions in conversation about the things that hold us all together. Especially if you are a regular here, we would really invite you to become a Ruta member if you have not become one yet. And also, if you find value, we would love to have you also supporting the work that we do. Even a little bit helps us pay the bills, such as paying for Zoom subscription, such as paying administrators, paying for the administrative costs of our website, and so on and so forth. This is very mundane. But this is exactly the kind of mundane work that makes Ruta possible and that makes bringing events like this to you possible. If you're new to Ruta, we are an association that connects scholars, activists, and artists across what I have just called the Ruta regions and beyond. And our goal is to foster solidarity and anti-imperial um, network of knowledge, of shared knowledge, uh, in which we can theorize regions within their own terms, on their own terms. So I am going now to switch out of my role as the facilitator and hand over the microphone to Teresa, and I will shift into my speaker mode where I will wait for my turn to speak.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gražina, for the introduction. I'm Teresa Hendel. I'm one of the founders of Ruta. I'm a philosopher who works on issues on global health justice and East-West health inequalities and hierarchies of knowledge. And I've also founded the Central and Eastern European Feminist Research Network, which probably makes me the right person to also moderate this particular webinar on gender self-determination and authoritarianism, in which we focus on the conversations across the Ruta regions. This time it's Europe's East, the Baltic, and Central Asia, most predominantly, but we can also go further. And of course, Latin America. And for this, we have the honor to have Gabi with us. It's also an absolute honor to be able to moderate this day with an incredible lineup of sharp thinkers and doers and also friends. I reflected that I finally made it to the point of my feminist life when I get to moderate my friends and partners in crime, which is absolute joy. And I think at this difficult time right now in the world where we see authoritarian and far-right politics tightening its grip and mobilizing left, right, and center, it's really important to build these communities and to lean into friends and some of our most trusted networks that can carry us on, and really where we can be there for each other, because the world is quite a disturbing place for us to navigate a lot of the time. So today we will be discussing authoritarian politics, and we also observe and experience how women's bodies and queer lives have become central battlegrounds, from anti-LGBTQ plus legislation in Central Asia to reproductive rights, rollbacks in Latin America, to the entrenchment of rigid gender politics across Eastern Europe, and also Russian colonialism. And this webinar brings together scholars and activists for this third installment of our dialogue series with Ruta in Latin America. And we really want to know how to build stronger movements against the far right and authoritarian shifts, and discuss how we have resisted them, how we can keep resisting them, how to perhaps build stronger movements, and hopefully also stronger and wider solidarities. And so I'm very glad to have Gabriela Arguedas Ramirez, who is a professor of philosophy and women's studies at the University of Costa Rica, where she teaches bioethics, medical ethics, and many feminist topics. She has published a lot of articles on a wide range of topics, from COVID-19, global bioethics, ethics of genetic patents, obstetric violence, and medical disciplinary power, food ethics and ecofeminism, religious fundamentalism, sexual rights, and bioethics and populism. It's a wide range of topics, and I have to say, we met in bioethics, and it's a difficult discipline sometimes, because a lot of the discussions are rather, they come short of engaging with genuine concerns of power. So I have always absolutely appreciated Gabby's voice, because we met as the people who actually want to raise these kind of concerns, and also concerns of gender oppression and gender justice. So we very much met in a field that isn't always open to these voices, and basically I think became quite trans-regional allies, which was very meaningful. And you have always also been such an ally in discussions about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which is also not something that I or any of us take for granted. So we're really happy to have you here. So Gabi has more than 10 years of experience in collaboration with the Inter-American Human Rights Institute, which is also work that's very relevant to what we will be discussing. She trained healthcare providers in topics related to human rights and health, and currently is a co-PI on a project on solidarity and pluriversality that is funded by a Discovery Award by the Wellcome Trust. So this is incredible work. Gabi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Teresa, for this presentation. And thank you for inviting me to participate in this conversation. I'm going to share my screen now. And okay. I think everybody can see it now.
Yes, now we can.
Perfect. Well, this is the title of our webinar, and one of the questions that guides this conversation is how authoritarianism is built, contested, and resisted through the politics of gender and the body. And this is something that I have been working on for a while now, and I'm going to present my approach to this problem that I think enters in dialogue with what is happening in the Ruta region as well. So this is what I have been working on: refeudalization, neo-fascism, and misogyny, the reconquest of bodies, subjectivities, and territories. This is a work in progress, but I have already published a couple of papers about this. So I want to begin with this quote by Donald Trump and Nick Fuentes. So this is Donald Trump. "I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the pussy." This is Donald Trump. again, Donald Trump, he said this to a journalist, well, a female journalist, quiet piggy. And this is Nick Fuentes. It's a tweet. He tweeted this after Donald Trump won the second election. Your body, my choice. And he said that your body, my choice forever, actually. And this is Nick Fuentes. He's a, I don't know how to put this. He's a misogynist, clearly, no, a MAGA supporter. He's very important in the manosphere. He's very important for the far right in the US, but he also has followers pretty much all around the world. And what I'm trying to say is that as he gets even more extreme in his comments and his narrative against women, against queer people, against migrants, against non-white people, and his last name is Fuentes, right? The more fame he gets, the more famous he gets, and the stronger his influence gets. So it's like by increasing the level of hate on the social media platforms, etc., he's becoming a powerful figure, no? So people are responding very positively to his hate narratives. So this is important. No, it's not just about him, it's what he is provoking in his followers and why those followers are engaging with him through this extremely violent discourse, right? So it's not Nick Fuentes, it's what Nick Fuentes represents in how his voice is being echoed by large publics around the world. Okay, this is kind of the introduction, no? So Nick Fuentes was not just trying to upset and offend feminist activists and women in general, nor he was just celebrating that Trump, a sexual predator, misogynistic, who has joked about sexually desiring his own daughter, was elected again president of the US. I see Fuentes' tweet as a critiker. He was activating the power of misogyny within the fibers of what Deleuze and Guattari defined as microfascism. In a nutshell, molecular or microfascism lives within individuals, is a latent force that desires to control and also to be controlled. So fascism never arrives only as an external force. It's always linked in different ways to microfascism. 2 years after the election of Donald Trump, more women in the US are dying because of limited access to timely and safe abortion. And not only that, the narrative against women's right to vote is being normalized. No, they are calling to suppress women's right to vote. And to the horror of many in and outside the US, an ICE official recently killed a woman in cold blood and in plain daylight after calling her, I quote, fucking bitch. Trump not only is blocking judicial investigations on this case, but he also re-victimized the woman, saying that the ICE official killed her in self-defense. There is a continuum between the exacerbation of misogyny and the increase in all forms of violence against women, and the resurgence of authoritarian, extreme right, and proto-fascist narratives, policies, movements, and governmental actions. This continuum happens under conditions of growing inequality and dispossession. This is very, very important to understand, which are as well key factors that explain the expansion of Christian fundamentalism, nationalism, and growing distrust in democratic institutions. And this process is happening in the US, it's happening in Costa Rica, it's happening in Argentina, Chile, Colombia, El Salvador, etc. This is Donald Trump, one of his tweets defending this ICE official who killed this woman, no? Okay. The most evident example of how authoritarian leaders and their allies are tapping on the micro-fascist subjacent energies to further their political objectives is the US, evidently. But several countries are following the same path, with devastating results for the people, the economy, and the integrity of democratic systems. As I said, Chile, Colombia, El Salvador, Argentina, and Costa Rica are illustrative cases. Even though Milei in Argentina, Milei is the president of Argentina, cannot be considered yet as a fascist leader, but he's getting close. He's displaying clear signs of fascism. Moreover, Milei has become a poster boy for the international far right and the neo-fascist movements in several countries in Europe, specifically in Germany, the US, and Latin American countries. In Costa Rica, micro-fascist misogyny was fundamental in the electoral success of the neoconservative right-wing party in government right now. They have displayed fascist sympathies and alliances. Rodrigo Chavez, who is the former president, but now is double minister. He has now 2 appointments. So it's like he continues to be the president. He left his job at the World Bank because of sexual harassment complaints. This is important. No, these leaders share very similar traits in relation to how misogynistic they are. But the thing is that Rodrigo Chavez accepted Trump's request to make Costa Rica one of the countries that accepts third country deportees from the US. So right now we are complicit in this fascist policy of expulsion of people from the US. Now, the resurgence of fascism in the 21st century, I believe, is marked by the catalytic effect of misogyny and the masculinistic grievances in a context of a staggering concentration of wealth and power that some scholars have described as a process of neo-feudalism or refeudalization. I have described the well-organized and effective attacks against women's rights that have occurred in many countries, both in the global north and the global south, as a process of reproductive reconquista. This is the concept that I have been working on. Neoconservative political religious movements, young men who may not consider themselves as religious or conservative, but who believe women should go back to their natural roles, and who see themselves as victims of the disproportionate influence of feminism, migration, and globalization, are key players in this new reconquest. The desire to reconquer power over women has been instrumental in the expansion of narratives that link the advancement of women's rights and democratic values with the perversion of politics, the emasculation of men, and the consequent debilitating transformation of Western nations. Well, this is an example of what I'm talking about, and I invite everyone to see this documentary series, Inside the Manosphere. Men who see themselves as victims of feminist games and who see progressive male politicians as traitors to the nation and to the natural order of things believe there's only one way out of what they consider to be a decadent, misandrist, new global order, embracing radical, anti-system, anti-democratic movements and political parties led by radical men. I could put this in other words, but I think it may be, it's politically incorrect, but extremely radical right-wing leaders, such as Trump in the US, Milei in Argentina, Cast in Chile, etc. This profound anger and resentment are also the result of political and cultural narratives disseminated by different platforms, including social media, designed to increase polarization, which favors the interests of elites and groups empowered that espouse anti-democratic interests. In the end, these elites have managed to instrumentalize this anger and resentment to shield their interests and the practices and systems in place that enable them to hyper-concentrate economic and political resources. The link between refeudalization, authoritarianism, and misogyny can be better visualized as a process of domination, destruction, and subjugation. It requires the collaboration of a significant part of the population. Most men are not part of the elite of billionaires and politicians, many of whom, by the way, are included in the Epstein files, who are seeking to undermine democratic systems everywhere with the purpose to erase any sort of regulation over their business operations. The question then is, why do so many men and some women actively participate in the protection and promotion of a state of affairs that is not going to benefit them at all? What is in there for them? The spectacle of anger and revenge. This is Milei, right? Everybody, I think many people have seen this spectacle of violence with chainsaw. He even gave a chainsaw to Elon Musk as a present. Again, Milei. So this is just an example. One of the promises Milei made during his campaign was to shut down the agencies, the governmental agencies in charge of eradicating violence against women. This is just one of many, many, many examples. And many young men voted for him precisely because of his anti-feminist discourse. So it's easier to blame women's gains for men's losses precisely because misogyny is at the center, at the core of micro-fascism. The current state of economic and political affairs cannot and will not offer men better social conditions, better jobs, better wages, but it can offer them something they want: a return to an order of things in which they were small kings, but kings nonetheless. Kings of their homes, kings on the streets, kings at the workplace, kings in the public sphere. They yearn for more living space. And the only way of getting it is to take it away from women and other groups and individuals who are considered inferior. That's how the story they have been listening to goes. This narrative is quite clear in the documents Project 2025 and Saving America by Saving the Family, a foundation for the next 250 years by the Heritage Foundation. Milei, for instance, have been applying these ideas since he took office. These men want to reinstate, these angry, resented men want to reinstate an order of things in which mere men and women are women, as it was before feminism and the LGBTQ movement came along to change everything. They want to take what is naturally and divinely theirs. That's what they believe. In this re-established order, they will be able to say whatever they think, and they will have again the right to treat others however they feel they are entitled to. This is the way out of their grievances that will serve the economic order dominated by the new feudal lords. Misogyny then is fundamental, but it's not a monopoly of the right, and this is very important, no? But I'm concentrated on the right now, but we have a misogyny problem on the left as well. On every occasion that Trump and Chavez and Milei and Bukele take the opportunity to connect with what Adorno described as the little man, they do that. No, they take every occasion possible to connect with the little man. Through misogyny, they become brothers. And the abysmal difference in power, wealth, privilege become insignificant. They bond through their conviction in the superiority of men over women and over LGBTQ people. And also, they bond over the belief that the Western culture is superior to all others. In this way, the feeling of inferiority that bothers so many men in so many different places, the frustration they feel for having lost control or power or dignity or a sense of purpose, is, to say the least, appeased by the satisfaction of revenge. An extremely powerful leader who is in many determinant aspects just like them, for instance, Trump, is restoring them to their former rightful place, head of household, superior of men, alpha males. Each time Trump forces women to leave the room so men can come in and take their places in the army, for instance, every time Trump publicly humiliates women, especially women in a position of authority or power, is a victory for them, for all the little men whose micro-fascist energies have been waiting for the call to come to surface. Milei does the same thing, Chavez too, etc. When Milei closed the ministry dedicated to gender issues and women's rights, he's not doing it just for neoliberal purposes. He wants to destroy feminist conquest, to humiliate women, and in doing so, providing satisfaction to his base. And this is another important factor in this process of reproductive reconquista. Religion is fundamental. And here we have this image of the executive order signed last year to the establishment of the White House Faith Office. This woman is one of the most powerful religious leaders in the US right now, and she's very close to Trump, as you can see. Okay, so the refeudalization and reconfessionalization of the state and the public sphere. One of the most significant aspects for understanding how this process of refeudalization is rapidly evolving into a direct assault on democracy is what I have described as the reconfessionalization of the state and the public sphere. Reconfessionalization, Costa Rica is a good example, but it's happening everywhere, represents a pivotal step in the process of refeudalization. It entails a direct clash with the political legacy of the Enlightenment, and consequently with the ethical political foundations of the contemporary concept of democracy, of democratic republic and civic life. More importantly, the reconfessionalization of the state and the public sphere stimulates integrist narratives against women's rights, self-determination, and freedom. These narratives also intertwine with racial and national anxieties, for instance, the replacement theory, this conspiracy theory about ethnic replacement. So the result is a misogynistic discourse against women's self-determination that blames women for falling birth rates and blames feminism and social justice movements for putting in danger their heritage, or ethnocide, as they call it. So this is just an example, and I'm about to finish, of also this reconfessionalization of the public sphere. This guy is Bolsonaro's son, not the former president of Brazil. And he's wearing this t-shirt that says Dios volt. That means in Latin, God's will. This is another meme from Bolsonaro's campaign, God, fatherland, and family. And this is the figure of a crusader. And this is a guy calling to vote for reform in the UK and dress banner. This is another meme. It says Trump to liberate West Europe, making fun of Angela Merkel. And you can see all those new crusaders. No? So this medievalist nostalgia and instrumentalization by the far right is another sign of refeudalization and reconfessionalization. And it's happening everywhere, in Portugal as well, by the way. And this is another image of Trump dressed as a crusader, rescuing the West Well, we know what this means, right? So this is what I have prepared for you today, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Gabi. This is sobering, but necessary display of where the manosphere and the far right is going. And thank you so much also for mapping it for us so well across Latin America, because we need to know more about those corners of the far right and authoritarianism. I've recently been in some very powerful also webinars on Iran, and Iranian speakers were saying how little we also know about non-Western models of far right and supremacism, right? And how I mean, we know this also very much from societies that have been affected by Russian imperialism and colonialism, that these kind of forms of authoritarianism and extremism are very often not identified and missed, including on the left, because the templates that we have are just so one-sided and, you know, fit one type of that movement a lot of the time. So this was really useful. Thank you so much. So now we will hear from Žáner Sakrbaeva. It's so good to have you with us. You're such a regular by now with Ruta, which we really appreciate. Žáner is one of the co-founders of the Kazakhstan feminist initiative Feminita. She is a fierce lesbian, feminist, powerlifter, and poet. And I read this bio in Ukraine last year when you were with us at our last Ruta conference, and I always think this is the best, one of the best CVs I've seen in my life. I'm so glad that you exist. And she has an international degree, a very international education background. She studied across Kazakhstan, Lithuania, and Japan, where she did her PhD at Tsukuba University and dedicated it to trans community in Kazakhstan and state policies shaping trans identities and bodies. She organized and successfully held the first lesbian Kuritai in Central Asia, and before she was with us in Ukraine, she was arrested for 10 days for a protest against femicide in Kazakhstan that took place in 2024. And her arrest was clearly political. The government tried to isolate activists before the 8th of March, International Women's Day. And we know that since then, Žáner faced more political repression for her activism. And in the past, you were telling us also how it's particularly challenging in Central Asia because feminists and queer feminists are leading decolonial movements and activities, and that's why the governments fear you so much. So we are really glad to have you with us because your voice and work are so important, courageous, and massively inspiring. So Žáner, the floor is yours. We want to hear from you about what you see from your side of things.
Thank you very much. For me, it's a great honor to be with you today, with Ruta and all who are interested in region, which is sometimes not very clearly seen from the not just Western point of view, but I think even from the people who somehow travel internationally, do not clearly maybe see what regions are. And I think the best way, not just read books or even listen podcasts, but probably come and be in the city or be in the region that you research. I think this is the best way of living experience. From what should I start? We have so many changes since I was together in Ukraine with you. I was actually persecuted second time. I was how to say, government decided to create a fabricated case against me. And for this time, they wanted some kind of something different, not just 10 days of detention, but something that they think could harm me, my reputation. So they decided to create some kind of provocation while I was in cafe eating pizza with my friends. And this provocation ended up by accusing me in beating a woman who came and shouted in cafe, whom we couldn't even understand what she wants, but she blocked immediately exit. And of course, policemen came immediately by the call of one of the friend of this woman. So it's very interesting how in Kazakhstan, the practice of titushki, this is Ukrainian term for a guy who did that kind of, practices, which is clearly provocations. When you see a person who is out of blue coming to your event and not just listen, because listen is okay. I'm ready to give you information, to speak with you. Maybe you are homophobe, maybe you are a heterosexual person who lost. It's okay. You can speak with us, but not to shout and do something else. Titushki usually use, unfortunately, physical power or try to make it physical. And they try to make the image of that activist is doing something, and then this activist starting to fight and house, and you do not know to whom to believe. And they wanted the image that I, as a feminist, as open lesbian in Kazakhstan, that I beat women. So they wanted that clearly in the title of our media. Of course, this happens also for people who try to register political party. When they go to regions, very different people come and they try to shout to stop you to collect signatures, because in Kazakhstan it's crucial when you go to regions and you want to open your party, green, LGBT, I don't know, whatever you want, but you need to collect signatures. This is very focal. And of course, it's impossible because you have a scandal on your meetings. You cannot even just to say something to the people because they do not hear you. And this is what happened. Of course, the lesson, what I see, and how to say the analysis, what I see is how our authoritarian country actually learns from very good learning from Russian Federation, who is actually, of course, influencing Central Asian narratives, influencing mostly in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, I think in that order. Because Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan somehow, I do not know, maybe there are many other reasons, but under the colonial pressure of Russia. And I would like to say, and this is true, we are a colony of Russian Federation because we still supporting Russia in trade, in bringing them oil while they are NPZ, the oil storages burning. Kazakhstan saving Russia. Because how do you think Russia still have power to continue war? It's not because somebody on the West or far West or Middle West bringing oil. It's because Central Asian colonies, Central Asian countries, and I say it with shame, bringing a lot of money, oil, any resources you would like to have, electronic chips, micro schemes, whatever you want, because you can find it in Kazakhstan. And there were so many investigations how Kazakhstan supporting Russia. And, when we as people, as civil society try to vocalize this, it's so hard not to be persecuted, because even if we speak about Kazakh language, that Kazakh language should be the first in the constitution. And in our new constitution, which was actually started be in power on 1st of July, it's very recent, it's 3 days of our new constitution. So when you look in this constitution, you see how even Kazakh language status is always cannot be recognized as it is the one language, the one of Kazakhstan. It should be the one. but it always that we have to obey somebody or do some kind of gesture of I don't know what to say that, oh no, also Russian language. Russian language was in previous constitution equally, they used the equal, the wording that Kazakh is equal with Russian, Russian is equal with Kazakh. But now they do naridu. That means in line or some. I even don't know why all this philological, because I'm philologist too, and I really do not understand. Trying to pretend, trying to hide a lie, trying to say that no. In new constitution, Kazakh language have a better position. No, it was never there. Since 1995, since our first constitution was created by specialists, people in law, Kazakh language was never in the first place. If I will publish today some article or Facebook post that I would like to see Kazakh language to be first, tomorrow or maybe 1 week after, I would be persecuted by article which is criminal, 173, if I remember correctly, sorry. That means the incentrating, interethnical hatred.
Inciting, yeah.
Yes, incite. Yes, and we are living in Kazakhstan. Just imagine living in Kazakhstan, Kazakhstani person who would like to speak and feel better in Kazakh language, receiving criminal article just because we would like to speak in Kazakh or develop Kazakh, because if you speak Kazakh more, you develop the language. But it's not possible. So isn't that we are colonial? We are very colonial. We are a colony. And because of that colony, many laws are copy-paste from Russia. And I would like to start from tax code. I would like to start from LGBTQI propaganda, so-called propaganda. I would like to start from the killing of stray dogs and cats at streets during 5 days if the owner is not coming to the shelter. Of course, the owner is not coming because owner does not know where their dog probably went, because there is no system to control, no monitoring, and they are all killed. And what I see in Georgia, in Kyrgyzstan, in even Turkey, all same line, same narrative. It's like the Putin, maybe even do not call because he is not very good in internet. I do not know. Maybe he writes a letter by a pencil and sending it to presidents of authoritarian countries, because we have similar things with Turkey on trans people, with Kyrgyzstan on LGBTQI propaganda, with I don't know who, some countries who has similar tax code reform, all the similar thing. And sometimes I think, oh, okay, I'm living probably in Russian Federation, just probably somehow expanded to Kazakhstan. And we have to, if it is true, we just would like our government to speak honestly, saying we are still a colony and you should not shut up because you do not know nothing. But I see this, and this is such a shame to feel it in daily life practice, in daily life routine, not just the activist, but just a woman who goes to street, go to bus, I don't know, walking by foot, and see everything of colonial that presses us. What else I wanted to mention, that it also goes to religion, the pressure. I think the first pressure which we actually have probably as a colonial was on religious people, especially Muslim people, because we have by statistics more than even 80% of people who believe in Islam, although we were just recently atheistic. I do not know how you just wake up from USSR and become Christian or Muslim. Really, I do not know. But many people of Kazakhstan, they transformed and believe in Islam. And they have this pressure on them because it's always also very injustice cases on people who just would like to study Quran or study other benches of Quran, because if you read literature, sometimes you read poetry, sometimes you read prose. It's probably more genres in the literature, and that's why you read it and try to discuss. We also had a lot of women club who would try and understand what is Quran for them, and they're all persecuted and punished by the government. Another sensitive topic is, of course, women's rights and LGBTQI, because for our government, it's now understandable, especially in Trump regime, that women's rights equal to LGBTQI rights, and feminism is harming young people. I do not know how they come to conclusion, but in 1990s, we had gender studies in university. Of course, it has not existed too long. It's not the Berkeley or I don't know who else you love to be mentioned. But, it was very clearly, it is about women and their autonomy. And it was accepted by Nazarbayev, ex-president of Kazakhstan. But when we come to the second one, who is diplomat by the education, and you believe he's a very intelligent person, because he worked with UN and still working, because you cannot say to UN by, we're living in international frameworks and also in this UN system. And we really do not understand why the second president is trying to be better than the first one in tightening authoritarian regime, because sometimes we feel probably we would fall to totalitarian regime, because many things are scaring for now, for women's rights and LGBTQI, because now we have propaganda of LGBTQI, and propaganda means, and I'm just citing the vice minister words, vice minister of culture. So he said that propaganda means creating positive image of LGBTQI. So, for example, if I publish myself and say that I'm Janar, I'm lesbian, and I am doing, I don't know, gymnastics, and I'm so happy. So this is interpreted as propaganda, because if you hear that gymnastics, lesbian, oh yeah, we're also becoming lesbian. So they really do not know, not sociology, not anthropology. They do not know anything about gender, and they are not interested in, because they're just copying the words that already Russian officials told about propaganda. Really, we found same wording in Putin's mouth goes to vice minister mouth. How it happens? Wow, somebody is watching internet, but not Putin, of course. So it's very, I don't know, we're living now in many copy-paste things, and sometimes we do not even, expect something pushing forward for democracy, because EU in that plan probably a little bit weak, although we have a lot of European contracts and the Bank of Development and so on. And the final thing that always bringing me astonishment, really, is that in authoritarian countries, if you look a little bit closely, like in Kazakhstan, the person who actually ruled the country, our Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, Kassym-Jomart Kemilevich, you see, I pronounce all his name correctly, right? I'm not doing any mistake. So it's possible, right? Because somebody cannot even pronounce his name. So Kassym-Jomart Kemilevich living in Kazakhstan as a usual gay, homosexual man, because he divorced, he do not have official partner as a woman. Also, he behaved himself a little bit like that. So it's very interesting that in authoritarian countries like Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, leaders trying to protect traditional values, which are not in the place starting from them. our ex-president Nazarbayev, maybe you think, oh, probably maybe the one, because we had only two presidents, maybe the one was better. The one was developing marriages with second wife, third wife, fourth wife. He has a lot of illegal wives with many children. Where are traditional values? So these first leaders, they never behave themselves as a Trump. Also, we can go further, Orban and many guys in suits. They never behave as they are protecting traditional values. This is a bullshit. In authoritarian countries, they are not traditional guys with traditional families, because we also can question what is traditional family. Traditional family for Kazakh people living outside in steppe and having a cattle. Do you have a cattle? Today, Kazakhstani person, probably they are more industrialized. They live in a city. They do not have a cattle. So we cannot say, let's come together to traditional living, because it is not possible already. Many knowledge is forgotten. 40 types of products from milk forgotten, even the names of them forgotten. Only Mongolian researchers can now tell me what are 40 of these products. I know only 5 probably, because we were we were bringing to city also by colonial power, and now we are in the some kind of all this situation like in stuck. We do not know what is it, and of course. I would like to give you a hope. I would like to always finish something by very hopeful, speech or wish. Of course, we do continue our activism, and we will never stop, even if our country become totally totalitarian, because we have nothing to lose. If they think that I somehow thinking about me that my life is more treasurable than the life of killed girl in Qatar 2022, they are wrong. My life is nothing compared to this little girl, because she was killed. She was killed by snipers who were hired by our government to suppress protest in 2022. So why my life is more higher, or should I think about myself how I should hide or protect myself? No. What our president do, he can kill little girls, but we will continue our fight so none of these little girls could be killed. This is my final words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jana. That was so powerful. And I will just say it's always such an honor to hear you speak, and also to see the strength and but also honesty about, like, very much with you, hearing you, that we don't really have a momentum where we can give some kind of optimistic speeches. It's really, however valuable, to really speak truth to power, to see the reality. Sometimes the brutality of it needs to be named, right? To be faced, rather than looking somewhere elsewhere, because it will not disappear when we look the other way. So this is really sometimes the biggest power, perhaps. And I also see it in our Eastern European and Central Asian dissent movements, right? When we look back and when we see how people resisted and how they went to prison and nevertheless persisted, and some didn't also, it's just incredible to revisit their words and just see what meaning they carry, and how meaningful it is that they were there and that we know of them, and despite of the regimes and the empires that tried to erase them. So this is incredible. And I also appreciate that you speak so openly, because it can cost you. It's really valuable and powerful for us. And how you also spoke about all the coloniality and the different legislation and the copy paste. This is really important to learn from. And the kind of I had some thoughts how we were also saying that the traditional values and the leaders, right? The order is to be beyond the order so that the rules don't apply to you and there is endless double standard and no accountability. That's how they function, and that's, as also Gabi was saying, that's what makes them so attractive to the people who want to have the same abuse of power. Thank you so much. So we will go to Grażyna, who I think I sense she will have a very similar voice. It's really good to have you also with us. Grażyna is a sociologist of race, religion, and gender. She did her dissertation in religious studies and cultural anthropology at Duke University in the US. Then she was an associate lecturer in political sociology at University College London and postdoc at Vilnius University Institute of International Relations and Political Science. And currently, she is assistant professor at Vytautas Magnus University in Lithuania. She is a board member of Ruta, so she's one of the core team and in charge of these initiatives and incredible webinars. So if you have ideas on what you would like to do and how you would want to collaborate, she's your person. And she is a very active political commentator in Lithuania and beyond. She is currently writing the book What's Left of Feminism in East Europe, which we are so eagerly waiting for. It's based on a lot of interviews with very badass and amazing feminists and activists across Europe's East that we so need to know more about and from. It's an ethnography of leftist feminist political and social vision in light of Russia's war against Ukraine. And her talk today will be also drawing from this research. So thank you so much for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Teresa. That was a lot of words to describe me. But today, what I really want to talk about is the women that I study. I primarily work with women who self-identify as leftist feminists, and I'm interested in those who are doers over those who are purely academics, right? Not to dismiss the academics, but I'm interested in the praxis, which means that I, to date, have talked to more than 80, closer to 90 scholar activists, artists, politicians, activists, and any other manner of women in Lithuania, Poland, Latvia, Ukraine, and Moldova, who are all trying to navigate this terrain that has become increasingly uneasy. On the one hand, there is Russia's aggression towards Ukraine. And on the other hand, there is resistance to it, which is necessary, but at the same time, resistance which can be mobilized and weaponized by ethno-nationalists and co-opted by authoritarian tendencies. And I think this is very important, because if today we are raising the question of self-determination, in this context, self-determination can be used in at least two senses. As queer activists and feminist activists use it, self-determination is a question of who governs the body, who governs reproduction, gender, and desire. Who is in charge of what happens to bodies that do not neatly fall into the body of what would be the presumed normative citizen of Western political thought and praxis, which is a straight, able-bodied, middle-class male. And then there's the second question of self-determination, which is the national self-determination. And the question which, as I mentioned before, has been made particularly pertinent by Russia's unwarranted invasion of Ukraine and the breach of its self-determination and territorial integrity, right? So here we are talking about issues of the nation deciding its own fate. On the one hand, it for those of us who come from feminist background, especially feminist political thought, the two are congruent and one is necessary for the other. Women's self-determination as a concept, women's liberty, and I would say that should extend, is not always extended to, especially in the context of turf wars, right, of attempts to limit and deny the rights of trans people, but should be extended to also queer people's self-determination. You know, that has been recognized as early as the very early 1800s, right, by Charles Fourier, who basically has said that, allow me to quote, social progress occurs in proportion to the advance of women toward liberty, and social decline in proportion to the decrease of women's liberty. And we could also say, translated into today's idiom, it is democratic progress, right? It is the progress of liberal democracy. It is the like all the things that we would value or should value. And then we could say that the inverse of that is true. And there is sort of a certain axiom that's been floating around the activist circles and around sort of journalists and sort of that women's and LGBTQ rights are certain minor canaries when it comes to democracy. If you want to see which direction democracy in a certain country is going to go, watch women's rights and watch the rights of queer people. Oftentimes, these are going to be the first restrictions of a government that is going to move towards illiberalism, right? And that is definitely something that has been true in the experience of the women that I've been talking to. And this is, and there's not been a single woman out of those whom I have interviewed in the region, to whom I talked, who said, you know what I'm fighting for is merely LGBTQ rights or women's rights on its own. It is always tied to democratic freedom. It is always tied to a certain political vision of what our country should be. The other thing that we are talking about today is authoritarianism. One of the things that I would like to immediately say, that when it comes to our region, the region that I call home, the region that I love passionately and that I am committed to, for better, for worse, in illness and in death, right, is that there are a couple countries that have become the easy scapegoats of sort of certain kind of whipping girls for sort of for all things that are wrong with authoritarianism and gender rights. And I would say there are good reasons. Hungary and Poland are the two that sort of have become I would say flat metaphors. When, you know, like people want to talk about democratic backsliding and also decreased freedoms of women and LGBTQ persons, Poland and Hungary are thrown out there, and that's the end of the conversation. But what is missing in that conversation is also that nowhere else have I seen the kind of resistance and the strength of political vision of the wise as precisely in the countries where these rights are curtailed by political regimes. But the other thing that gets missed is the countries where perhaps we should be also looking and monitoring what is going on. And that is Slovakia and that is Slovenia, but it is also the Baltics, because in Lithuania, we still are unable to ratify the Istanbul Convention. And right, so we are unable to accept the fact that the domestic violence against women is the kind of thing that we ought to commit to fight on international level. Right? We're unable to make that commitment. We are unable, like it. So right now, people who would like to register same-sex marriage have to do it not in a civil sort of ceremony, but they have to file a court case. And then it is an expense, like, right, like if a civil ceremony costs, under 100 euros, a court case costs in the thousands, right? And yet, my home country somehow is not sort of this easy target to whip. The other thing that I have also seen is that sort of a country like Moldova is another one that is very easy to pull out when you need a quick statistics and a cheap example of how bad women's situation can be, because it is often cited as sort of the leading country for women, for domestic violence against women and for women's poverty. But if we talk about domestic violence against women, yes, the situation in Moldova is dire, but oftentimes those who use sort of Moldova as this cheap example of sort of look at what's going on there, right? Like women have no self-determination, their bodies don't matter, there are no protections, and so on and so forth, are also oftentimes blind to hidden structural violence against women that is becoming an increasing concern in the West. Because it is very easy to spot broken bones. It is very hard to spot denied dignity, to spot denied healthcare, to spot hidden forms of discrimination. And yet both have devastating effects. Right. And sort of so what is it that I'm trying to get at is that when we talk about authoritarianism, right? For one, I feel like that word itself has become sort of such a catch-all, sort of that we dump all the bad guys, and yes, I'm being gender specific there, into that word, but we rarely sort of look at it structurally. It is very easy to spot authoritarianism at state level. But sort of if we look at sort of the way that we can think about authoritarianism, it becomes it doesn't require state level to be damaging. We can sort of think about authoritarianism also in local governance, because when, for example, when I was, talking to, once again, I'm going to circle back to Moldova. When I was talking to women in Moldova, they say, look, we are increasingly getting better laws. There are wins at national level, right? Like whatever problems we may have with Maya Sandu, at least we have a woman who fosters a kind of imagination in young girls, in young women, that they can aspire towards political career. But the issue that we have is at local level. When city mayors, city officials foster the kind of authoritarian local governance where staging mobbing campaigns against women becomes the norm, right? Where where we have the kind of authoritarian disposition in the legal system where a woman cannot prove such cases as stalking, right? Like being stalked in the sort of by her partner, where a woman cannot prove financial abuse by her husband, where a woman cannot prove marital rape. Right. So this kind of authoritarianism is much, much harder to put one's finger on. But if that has been made visible to me in Moldova, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist elsewhere. Right. And yet what we keep coming back to is we keep coming back to sort of state level questions, which sometimes conceal more than they reveal. Right. Now, the thing that I will end with is that the threat of authoritarianism in relation to self-determination, and especially for women and queer people in the region, does not only come from within. I was talking to a Ukrainian woman, right, who was experiencing some pretty serious issues related to gender discrimination in Ukraine. And yet she remained very much committed to what she was doing and to supporting resistance, because she said, here in Ukraine, even though I'm experiencing this, I have hope and I have vision that I can fight this. If we lose to Russia, my hope to fight it is gone. Right. So the question is where authoritarianism is located. Is it within or is it without? And I would like to very much sort of resonate with what Janar was saying, right? When you see documents, when you see speeches that are copy pasted, and we know where they've come from because we can trace them. There have been multiple international investigations that have traced them, for example, to the World Congress of Families and to Russian Orthodox Church initiatives and to Putin's ideologues, right? Then it's not to deny the grassroots sentiments, but to say that the grassroots authoritarian sentiment in the region is very much enabled and fostered by authoritarianism outside our borders. And with that, I will end.
Thank you so much. Yeah. These are really important things. And I kept thinking how, when you were speaking also, how difficult these discussions are on international levels when we also are trying to have them with an international left that doesn't want to see these kind of aspects and also doesn't recognize Russian imperialism a lot of the time, and how hard I am sitting now in Berlin, Germany. And it often, when I think about who I can align with, I can't go to most of the left because they just would deny the reality that we're seeing, and can't even spot basically other than Western forms of fascism and the far right, and it's very concerning. So I think maybe we can start on that, on some questions about how, because all of you basically also hinted on how well the far right and international authoritarian sort of movements, how well they coordinate, how well they mobilize, and how well they copy paste, right? And then how are we to build some stronger movements and solidarities when we often have a very fragmented left and very fragmented decolonial movements? And I wonder, I know we don't have many reasons for optimism, but if you have seen initiatives that worked maybe on more international levels, because we have them on our local levels, and I hope that Ruta is also one of them that can be more transnational for us, but maybe we can share some strategies that worked. And I will say that those of you who have questions, please put them in the chat. Do any of you feel eager to take this up? Or do you have other sort of questions or comments that, you know, also to one another that you feel like sharing?
Maybe I will sort of start with a bit of a prequel, right? I think that one of the things that I've noticed, and that is a recurring theme and a very understandable theme, is that building these networks and these solidarities is another form of work, right? It takes effort. Because there are no pre-existing networks. Somebody has to create them. They do not magically form. And sort of, I'm going to be also speaking about that at the conference, but sort of exhaustion and grief that accompany this kind of work, I think oftentimes make it incredibly hard to work beyond local level, right? There needs to be a certain level of capacity, right? And I think one of the things that we need to recognize, I think that there are initiatives, absolutely there are initiatives, but when we see those initiatives, we have to recognize that they exist because somebody chose not to sleep. Somebody chose to give up their rest. Somebody chose to do even though they had no more strength and energy left to do. Right. So I just sort of, there is sort of an underbelly. There is a prequel to this kind of work, which on the one hand, it is absolutely life-giving and sustaining, because without solidarity, it is very, very, like, especially international solidarity, it is very hard to keep going. This is where the vicious cycle, though, is. To build that kind of solidarity and to build those kind of networks is work in itself.
Yeah, and I also often see how the exhaustion, of course, the systems that work against us aim at the exhaustion, right? Because that's how they kind of create fewer or more obedient citizens. So I think, yeah, all of you have been at this for a long time. So we know a lot about exhaustion and endurance, and why resilience isn't always the greatest sort of thing to glorify amid all these struggles. Anyone wants to add to this? Or we can also think about, yes, Gabi.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to my colleagues in this webinar for their presentations. I was just thinking about this question that you have made about resistance, solidarity, how to respond to what is happening, and about also what to do with the left. You know, we have, I don't know if we can continue to use those categories, no, the left and the right. It's there's something to be said. There's something to be said about that as well, and not all people supporting far-right movements or authoritarian leaders are actually far-right people. I mean, they are reacting to something, and I think one of the mistakes that leftist movements, feminist movement, LGBTQ movement, in many parts of the world, one of the mistakes that I have identified is that we are falling into the trap of polarization. We have become, to some extent, also evangelicals. No, we are trying to convert, and we are trying to. We are engaging in not in dialogue, but in a sort of very, to some extent, paternalistic approach in conversation with those people that we see as adversaries or even enemies. So I think that there's something to be done that is very difficult, and is to listen to people with whom we deeply disagree, right? And to understand also what is what is about right-wing or authoritarian leaders movements. What are they doing to engage emotionally with very large social groups. What are they doing right? Because they are doing something right. That's the problem. They are doing something right. That's why they are winning. And there's something very important in relation to how do we engage with emotions and frustrations, and with epistemic humility, and also with I would say this, like an agenda that is based on minimum ethical agreements, not maximum ethical agreements, because that's impossible. So I think that maybe we need, well, many of us, or many movements, need also to retreat a little bit and reconsider what is happening and what is it that we might have done wrong, right? That's what I was thinking.
Jana, do you have any thoughts that you want to add to this?
Yes, I think we, because so many, it's patriarchy, capitalism, and toxic masculinity, of course, fighting with all these systems, because they're systems. It's not like, one day thing. Of course, it's very hard, and because feminism is trying to be inclusive and also intersectionalist, it's very hard to respond to every system in an equal way. I think feminism is really smashed patriarchy, and patriarchy is in agony now. It seems it's not in agony, but when somebody, then the creature, sorry for maybe that example, then the creature is in agony, it's fighting so fierce that you think it's still alive. I think patriarchy is really having a great crisis, and that's why a lot of movie about masculinity have men, or men have manosphere, I don't know, a lot of movie about why men failed in the society, and a lot of celebrity trying to find a way to answer. And I think maybe response would be also looking a little bit to systems that is not very much accepted or maybe understood, because I see the way only in some kind of social structures when I can share to other sister, not just expecting she will give me some resources, but because I want her to exist. And I speak socialist system even. We have to do something else and respond, not just giving something and expect something back. Just give it because we have to exist, and we have to just be here. Although this planet, of course, is fucked up, of course, by man and all the systems. But if we're still here, probably there is some kind of hope. I do not believe. I'm more in destroying, because I think the planet would be destroyed by us. But see, I cannot say it to you like very directly. I still have any hope we can do something else, and just support each other without nothing to expect back. This is how trees live. This is how birds live. They live in this world, singing a song, trees collecting water and sharing water to youngers. Of course, they don't accept sometimes some kind of trees because they're a little bit competing. But we then should look how all this nature that was before many, many things, how they really sustained so many cataclysms. And patriarchy is so little thing according to what dinosaurs lived. I think it's so small. So we should somehow learn from the living system, the ecosystem probably, because I do not see answers in library, because many, many classical works were written by men.
Thank you. So this makes me also think about the kind of strategies that you have that nourish you, right? And the kind of, because it also sounds like, and it makes sense that what can somehow carry us are also the local connections and the smaller things, because the big ones very often are carry this kind of exhaustion and they take so much work, what are some of the local activities or strategies that you find useful or that you see around yourself that help? I mean, you are all engaged in them. Gabi, do you have any thoughts on this? Gabi, you put your hand up. You can
Thank you.
switch the mic.
That's a difficult question. Right now here, I mean, the situation is not good. No, not just in Costa Rica, Latin America in general. So, but I think that despite what is happening, something that I could think of as not maybe positive, but providing some sort of energy, providing some strength, is that at this moment, many people are waking up. In my opinion, maybe it's a little bit late, but they are starting to look around, and that's something. I mean, that's something positive. No, it's like, yeah, maybe I feel that I have been crying into the desert for, I don't know, 15 years and trying to warn, my country and other people, this is coming, for crying out loud. We have to do something. And I felt like I was completely alone. But now to see that there are people reacting and starting to worry about what is happening, well, it's something, no? And maybe it's going to take time for us to reaccommodate and learn how to confront this global civilizatory crisis, no? Maybe it's going to take some time, but at least we are not alone, right? It's something, and it's the basis, no? It's the basic thing that we are not facing this alone. And it's, yes, it's terrible. It's a situation that is absolutely, to some extent, it's devastating. But there's no other way but to keep moving forward, right? We are not going to give up. We are tired, we are depressed, we are upset. But the truth is that we are not going to give up. And yeah, recognizing that is maybe something that can give us a little bit of energy.
Thank you. I will also say that you put in the chat your latest article, so for everyone who wants to read it, it's there. Make sure to read it. It's very powerful. Joanna, Grażyna, do you want to share anything?
I'm kind of not jumping on this because I think when it comes to local, there are so many, right? And I think that what brings women together at a local level is recognizing that my struggle is your struggle. And I was deeply touched by a conversation with a Polish leftist feminist who said, when we had the protests against restricting access to abortion, said a lot of women who came were neither leftists nor feminists, would have never used any combination of those words to describe themselves, and would have been horrified if anybody did use that combination of words. But and a lot of them were mothers too. But they said they recognized that these restrictions also affect them, affect their daughters, affect their mothers. This became personal. and sort of similarly, sort of in Moldova, right? So in Moldova, all the different NGOs in Chisinau, in the capital, who work with women's rights, decided, look, with women's rights and with LGBTQ rights, they said, look, we have our disagreements. We fight for the same sort of pennies that international organizations make available for funding, that the local government makes available for funding. All that, yes, true. But we are trying to defend the same people. We're trying to defend ourselves. And so why don't we put those differences aside? And there are 2 days that are really important for us. March 8th and Pride. So on those, like for the Pride March and for March 8th, we can't put those differences aside. And we can come together, because if these two battles are not won, all of us lose. Right. And sort of, so I see that sort of happening when the stakes are high, and sort of women from many different sort of persuasions and walks all of a sudden realize, we, like, my struggle is your struggle. And if we don't win together, we lose altogether. And so it is sad that it takes the stakes being raised so high, but it also shows that in a moment of acute crisis, solidarity is more possible. Solidarity is possible and cannot be fractured even by the divisions that this whatever latest installment of late capitalism and sort of techno-feudalism create.
Genre.
I will just put maybe, I do not know, just to my head, so my mom is not very supporting LGBTQ activism. She knows that I'm doing, she doesn't recognize I'm lesbian because she doesn't want to. But, I don't know, she's very, very, how to say, a great person. She understood everything. She knows when person lie and do not lie and everything. Of course, she somehow knows. And I think her attitude to me changed only when she saw very, very closely physically, because the second court, the serious one by criminal case, was in Astana. And I had to come to her flat because I was living with them, with my dad and mom during this court. And they all saw how, and they heard my lawyers giving me, WhatsApp audio, and they saw me how I was running from one room to another to prepare. And I think this also changed her because she saw how the system was so injustice, how system was created to punish me. And I think this closure, with the people who probably not with us yet, but trying to be close, or of course invite them. This I totally agree with Gabriela about, we have to speak with people, and somehow I think there is a hope in many people who now supporting right. Maybe they will not listen to, maybe we said to them, this is your language a little bit not correct, and they offended. We have a lot of examples on our meetings. And we should somehow work with people maybe a little bit differently, forgiving them technology, not knowing, I don't know who, great authors, women researchers. They just come because they maybe wanted to drink tea, be a little bit close. And this is how I think we should start again, unfortunately. Start again with the understanding that we need more allies, we need brothers and sisters, of course, more sisters to be with us, and people who maybe do not differentiate as sisters, but we have to be together.
Thank you so much. I think this is also a good thought to sort of start wrapping up on. I'm watching the time. Thank you so much. This was powerful. I will add 2 things. One of them is that in the last 2 months, I was in Hungary. I was doing archival research in Budapest, and it was actually incredible to be in a place that overthrew Orban. And so I'm thinking, we need to also, in the middle of all this doom and gloom, we really need to celebrate every little win. And this one was a big one because no matter how I see now people kind of saying, oh, the next one is also right and conservative, I think we really sort of underestimated what kind of authoritarianism there was under Orban, and also how much of the far right was coordinated through it and nourished through it. And it was absolutely exhilarating to see how it was this model of authoritarian rule that basically fell right. It was presented as inevitable and as something that has to be there. And also seeing sort of the American far right being so eager to keep it in power, and then it fell. That was absolutely powerful and incredible. And hopefully it will enable some shifts and domino effects from here. And the second thing I wanted to say is that when we go around and we talk to people from our regions and further, I keep telling people about Ruta, and they very often start with telling me how lonely and isolated they feel with their sort of struggles and also with their concerns and voices that are very often also not validated, right? And then we tell them that there's an association or there can be another initiative. It's just the kind of way of building on what you also said, Jan, or the building of communities where a lot of people feel isolated and lonely and not heard with their sort of concerns. And then there is a whole community of people who feel in a similar way, and there's such a power in coming together and not being alone with these concerns, because it also it can be the thing that gives us strength to keep going, or just company and friendship, and that's a start. That's a way to go. So hopefully we can continue these conversations and communities. And this is for us in summer the last webinar that we did, and next we are basically meeting in Ukraine. So with those of you in the audience who are coming, we look forward to seeing you there. Otherwise, we will also put a lot of our featured panels online so that you can see them and follow them up. And we're really hoping that we see a lot of you in the next run. And I will give the final word to Grażyna if she wants to say anything from her end of the webinars. And I'm really grateful that we had this conversation, and we will stay in touch.
All right, so I'm putting my sort of the initiatives lead hat on. For those of you who have been with us either directly or not through this season of webinars, thank you so much. These webinars are sort of a way for us to stay in touch and to keep the momentum going in between the conferences. They're also valuable on their own. All of the webinars, with the permission of the speakers when possible, are recorded and posted. Please do go to the Ruta website and find them there. Feel free to use them for yourself as educational resources in any way that you find useful and life-giving. We are going to be back with webinars, probably starting in September, and we have some exciting one planned. We will have, if this conversation was important for you, stay tuned, because we have a webinar series with at Gender, one of the largest feminist research conferences and associations in Europe planned. As well as conversations with partners in Taiwan and other places in the world. So stay tuned, stay in touch, subscribe to the newsletter. You will be among the first to know, and also follow us on all the socials. We try to do our best to keep everyone updated and to invite you to everything that is happening.